Hello, everyone. This is our inspired story of service for October. This month, we have the honor of meeting JC Glick, a retired lieutenant colonel, leadership consultant, keynote speaker, author, and one of the veterans featured in the 20-Year War photojournal, an exhibition opening up here in March at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. JC served in the U.S. Army as an infantry officer for 20 years, primarily in special operations and special missions units, with more than 11 combat tours. JC, thanks for linking up with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
You know, if I could share with everyone how we're going to kind of navigate this month's spotlight, we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to kind of hone in and zero in on three key transitions that JC has talked about in the 20-Year War book and in his life. That first transition is your transition from active combat deployment. As we mentioned, you had 11 combat deployments and what that was like transitioning out of that. And then your transition out of the Army and the military and becoming a veteran. And then finally, you talk a lot about your pathway to finding your tribe, and we're anxious to hear more about that today. So what was that like being in 11 combat deployments and then transitioning out of that active part of your military?
The combat deployments, quite honestly, even as I look back, were probably one of the highlights of my life. It's such focus of purpose. It's everything that you've trained for and you train for, and then being able to execute, and then the impact that you're able to have on your fellow warriors, on the areas where you are. And it's clear what you're going to do, right? So everything is clear, especially in combat, right? Even when the enemy is not always well defined, it's clear that you're looking for the enemy, right? It's clear that you're trying. The intent is clear of trying to make whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan a better place for the Iraqis and the Afghanis, or following national security policy. In combat, you get to decipher between interesting and important, and what's important becomes very, very clear. When you stop actively deploying, and it was the toughest transition I made out of the three that I talk about. A lot of the things that I just thought were interesting were important to a lot of other people. And I didn't think they were as important based on what I had done. And it's frustrating, and that loss of your purpose and your impact is so clear when you're deploying, and then all of a sudden you're not deploying anymore, and you have to search maybe a little bit for your purpose. And when those things that are just interesting become important to others, so they have to be important to you, then all of a sudden you're wading through kind of the fog of non-war. And you really lose kind of that vision and that drive. Very, very difficult. And about 18 months after my last deployment is when I first struggled and really, really struggled with that transition to the point where it was the first of 4 suicide attempts.
We talk about part 2 and that transition out of the military. And as you mentioned, you had 4 suicide attempts, and you're very open about that. And how was that next step for you, knowing that, you're no longer in combat deployments, and now you're getting ready to leave the military for good?
So quite honestly, that might have been my easiest transition, because I really prepared for it. I knew that, my military career was going to end. So I prepared, 2 years out, and I started looking at what I was going to do, going into leadership consulting, and I, was able to get an offer immediately. I mean, the day I came off active duty, I immediately went into an organization as a partner in a company. I already had a number of clients at a high level, from, professional sports teams to Fortune 100 companies.
Right.
That might have been the easiest transition, because it was new, it was exciting, and I felt like I was maybe a little bit better, because I was getting rid of some of the baggage of kind of the non-combat Army. right? The less mission focused army, or
Mhm.
or an army that maybe I wasn't as comfortable in. And I was going into something new, and there was excitement in that. There was certainly risk, but I felt very well prepared. And it took me about 3 years of that transition to go, oh wow, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm very alone. Um, and
Mhm.
and that then brings me into my third transition. So I would say the second transition, taking off the uniform, that was getting used to, not being an officer in the military anymore. That was getting used to, um, you know, integrating with a civilian population.
Mhm.
And quite honestly, that was even easy because I was still making a lot of, from consulting, I was still using a lot of my military experience
Mhm.
to bring to the civilian world. So it wasn't until, again, about 3 years into it that I went, oh my gosh, I really don't understand the civilian world. I'm not sure that I've integrated correctly. I've really ridden the coattails of what I used to do.
Mhm.
And what am I now? And who am I now? And I was very, very lonely, right? I wasn't, for the first time in my life, I wasn't part of something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
And I think, I drank a little bit of the Kool-Aid, and I was all the trappings that come with success in the civilian world, and not really realizing, oh, I'm not really taking care of myself. I'm not really looking out for the things that I know make me a better person, even for others.
Mhm.
And then it comes that third transition where you got to find your tribe. You got to find, because your tribe is given to you in the military, right? Whether
Right.
it's the Rangers or the Asymmetric Warfare Group or the Tomahawks, right? I was always in a tribe, and I was placed in that tribe, and that became my tribe. And we are so good in the military of accepting, everybody who comes in. You're just one of the team. You're part of the group, and then those are your people, and you do
Mhm.
everything with those people. And then you get out, and for a little while, everybody, and I think most people, kind of like the freedom of, okay, I'm an individual now. I'm just doing my thing, and it's me and my family. But you realize, oh my gosh, I need that tribe.
Mhm.
So then comes okay, how do I pick my tribe? Because your tribe may not be where you work. Your tribe may not be the people that you work with, or
Right.
the people that you see in the gym, or all of a sudden you're developing your tribe in people that you want to bring into your life. And it's different because in the military we're very trusting. Like, you come in and it's like, yeah, you're one of us.
Mhm.
You got to be a little bit more thoughtful in the
Right.
civilian world,
Yep.
and be more discerning on, okay, this is somebody who I really want to bring into my life, and this is somebody who's nice, but they're not really in my tribe. And that's not a bad thing, because maybe you wouldn't fit in their tribe either.
Right. You also talk about these pathways of success and these four things that you've discovered. So one of them is, find a mentor coach, a civilian, then find someone who's younger than you, and then find a new team, which you kind of alluded to a little bit, and then staying fit. Talk about those, if you can, those four steps, and a little more in depth, because it's a great creed to kind of follow, that you're living out now.
Yeah, and it took me a while to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So one is, you've got to have these mentors that are civilians that never had anything to do with the military,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, I have a great mentor in Mike Maroney, who's the CEO of Workforce, and he is amazing, right? And even though we're close in age, he has accomplished so much, and
Mm-hmm.
he understands the civilian world in ways that I don't, and I need to talk to him. And he doesn't have a preconceived idea of military,
Right.
right? He accepts me for who I am and who he sees, and understands, okay, he knows about leadership, but I'm not sure always how to apply it correctly in the civilian world,
Mm-hmm.
because certain things that are acceptable, for example, and I'm not talking being draconian, I'm talking about something that in the military we wouldn't even think twice about talking to somebody about their personal life and how things were going at home, and how, like, you got to be careful with that in the civilian world. So having somebody who helps navigate that is really, really important. Then there's this idea of, a mentor who's younger than you. And what we forget in the military is we consistently have younger people who are pushing us physically and mentally every single day. They've got new ideas and they're pushing their new ideas, which is forcing us to change. I've got a great younger mentor named D Street, who he came out of the Air Force, and he's passionate and he's energetic and he knows everything that's going on. He's just got out of his 20s, and he brings fire to me, right? He inspires me in his thought process, and he tells me kind of what's going on in the world, and challenged me on some things that, quite honestly, I have some antiquated thinking about, and forces me to go, ooh, maybe I need to think more about this. And I think that's so important, because I think the older we get, the more set in our ways we are, because we're constantly reinforced with people who are our age, who are telling us that what we think is right. And both of those relationships are very symbiotic, because mentorship isn't just one person growing, it's both of you growing together from your experiences.
Right.
Then it's this idea of finding your tribe, right? Finding who are your people. And in some cases, it's an organization like Merging Vets and Players, where you can get professional athletes and combat veterans together, and there's an absolute tie there. There's an absolute connection there. And some of those people are my friends, right? So some of those people I communicate with, and some of them are former veterans, and a lot of them are former professional athletes, and we check in on each other. It's about finding your people, but having people, and it's those people that you had in the military. And this is a key point. The people that we had in the military, if we called them at 2:00 in the morning and said, I need you, they were going to be there. Well, you got to find those same kind of people, and they exist in the rest of the world. You just got to find them, and they're a little bit harder to find. And then the last thing that I talk about is, and I think this is really important, we spend, whatever your career was, whether it was 4 years or 20 years or 30 years, part of our everyday is physical fitness. And in the last 6 years, we've learned more about the human brain than we've ever known before. And we know the positive impact that physical fitness has on the human brain. So it's not just about staying healthy because our cardiovascular health matters, but we also know that, it makes you more productive. It helps your neuroplasticity. It helps you regulate emotion better. It helps you integrate with the rest of the world a little bit better, because you think clearly. Right. So I'm not saying you have to go out and do 20-mile road marches anymore, but you do have to do something. You got to be active every day, where you're getting out and you're feeling that physical fitness, because it is part of who you are.
So, and again, we know a little bit about JC, that you are an author, and you've had some great books come out recently: A Light in the Darkness, Leadership Development for the Unknown, and then Meditations of an Army Ranger Warrior, Philosophy for Everyone, that came out in 2019. I do want to talk real quick as we get close to wrapping up about this. We talked before we started recording about this tweet that you sent out about a month ago or so. And, we've been talking a lot in the last 6 weeks about Your Service Matters and ending the 20-year war and what that means to not just the veteran community, but just to everyone, because it does affect everyone. And I want to read this tweet and just get your reaction to it. When you wrote this back in September, you said, "We cannot measure a veteran's worth by the outcome of the conflict. We measure them by the quality of their character and ability in combat, their strength and resiliency in transition, and their vision and leadership for the future." What did your people would say about it or react to it?
One is we as a veteran community have to separate what we did from political outcomes. They're completely separate and need to remain separate. A politician's outcome is going to be different than a military outcome. And to think that it didn't matter because the outcome that a politician comes up with is less than optimal, you can't measure your value by that. Your value is what you did while you were there. The second piece is, okay, you've done that. Now, continue to be resilient, continue to be thoughtful as you transition out. And then as you look toward the future, we have a 20-year war with all these incredible veterans who are no better nor worse than anybody else, but bring a certain value in leadership and vision that we have to bring to the rest of the community. So a lot of times what I was saying there was, veterans, I want you to go out and lead. We have the ability to make the world around us better. And we know so much stuff from our time in service, right? We certainly saw warriors before we saw gender or race or ethnicity or religion. We saw you in uniform and you were part of something bigger than yourself, a mission. We can bring that to the rest of the country, and we can help make our country better. And that was to the veteran community, but to the American population, I think there's certainly a value that they have in us, right? They thank us for our service, but I think that sometimes they pigeonhole us and they're not really sure where we fit, right? They have this perspective of who we are as opposed to who we could be. And I think that you see incredible veterans doing incredible things all the time. We need more of that, but we need the community to see us for more than just former military folks, which they have their own perspective of whether it's draconian or, it's regimented and it's obedient. And no, it's a bunch of people who are really good in complex environments, solving complex problems and leading and understanding values and culture and the importance of them. And there's a lot to offer there. So on both sides, it's about, one, veterans, don't be afraid to integrate into the community to a point where you can help lead the community, and community, help your veterans integrate, because this can't be one-sided, like, well, we're going to integrate. This has to be a symbiotic relationship where we're pushing to integrate and they're accepting our integration and learning about us, not pigeonholing us.
As we wrap up, you're a great example of doing so much more or even more than you did in service as a veteran than when you were even deployed 11 times in active combat, which was just as crucial and important to what you were doing. But I think what you're doing now is it can mirror that. And like I said, folks, he's got some great books that we're going to highlight for you. JC, as we know, has become a fast friend of the NVMM here. And he's featured in the 20-Year War book, which we've talked about will be an exhibition here in the spring next year. So you'll get to see his face in that exhibition. But I suspect there's a lot more to come from JC and the NVMM here as we grow together. But again, JC, thanks for your time today in doing our Inspired Story of Service for this month. And it really is inspiring to know that you have such a positive attitude about making things simple for everyone. I mean, your 4 steps, your 4 pathways it's a great kind of creed to go by. And again, for all these stories and other inspiring stories of service, and of course our story spotlights, visit our museum website at nationalvmm.org. And to hear more about JC Glick, you can go to our website anytime. And again, he'll be featured in our 20-Year War exhibition coming this spring. But again, we're fast friends, so we'll be talking a lot more with JC Glick in the future. JC, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.